Blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Joining us now is Dan Gabriel. Dan, good to have you with us.
Kevin, good morning. Thanks so much for having me today.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service as a former CIA officer. Now you've got a new film out, Mosul. You've got a lot going on. You go from the dark arts to the major arts.
Well, I'll tell you, the CIA is a place that has a lot of stories, but, when you're there, you can't really tell them. And frankly, to some extent, even after you leave, you can't either. But Mosul is a place that's near and dear to my heart. It's an emotional and personal story for people that served in Iraq and, frankly, in the theater at large. I was actually there 2004 to 2005 at FAB Marez for a short time. So it's a fascinating story.
Well, what's it like being in the CIA? You say you can't talk about things. I mean, when we have a rough day at work, it's always fascinating to me, and I say this with all due respect, Dan, about you people, because you guys, you have a bad day of work, you can't go home and vent it to your spouse like everybody else does.
Well, you put your finger right on it. Actually, that's kind of the upside, is that really when you leave work, you can't do work at home and can't take files home, so you don't have to worry about that. It kind of leave it at the office.
That's brilliant. Yeah, sorry, I can't take my work home with me. But we're talking about dangerous, stressful situations that most of us, again, will watch your movie Mosul, or we'll see read the fantasy books. But I mean, I imagine you've been involved in some really serious, high stress stuff.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The film, hopefully the viewers will feel the kind of the danger and the intensity. It's filmed all in the first person as it happens between October 2016, July 2017. So you're right there on the front lines, embedded with the Iraqi security forces as we traveled north from Baghdad up the Tigris River to Mosul. So we're attached with this journalist, Ali Mullah, who's taking us on this journey between October 2016, July 2017 as the operation's taking place. And frankly, it's kind of like Heart of Darkness or like an Apocalypse Now, because the further we go up the river, as we get closer to the final battle in July 2017, things get more and more strange and, as you said, more and more dangerous.
Yeah, this is fact, not fiction. Most of us think that it's over. I mean, the war in Iraq is over, but it isn't.
Well, we do call this the last battle of the Iraq War, and it's hard to imagine how long that war has been going on. Push aside Afghanistan for a second. But it's, the caliphate is over and it's defeated if you think of it as a geographical or a political entity. But really, we shouldn't do that. And there's one of the characters that we'll meet in the film at the very end. His name is Nasser. He's an ISIS recruiter, and he's been captured, of course, and he's on camera. We've got him talking about the ideology and what he used to do. And he tells us point blank, nothing is over, that this is about an ideology. It's not about a time or a place. And the ideology will live long, far longer than he does. So it's a cautionary tale in that sense, and a different way to think about this threat.
So Dan Gabriel joining us, former CIA officer. How did you become involved in the project?
So after I left the agency about 2012, I started to get into media and film and progressively did more and more complicated projects. This is my first film. So we started this in the fall of 2016, and it's taken quite some time to put it together, but I think it's all come together nicely.
Well, you make it sound so simple, though, Dan.
Well, so we were doing filming and media production in the Middle East. We had done some TV shows, actually 2 seasons of a TV show on ISIS defectors. So we were already in Morocco, we were in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. And basically, it literally was as simple as one of our crews in Iraq during the operation, or actually I should say before the operation, had the opportunity to get embedded with the Iraqi security forces. So we took the opportunity.
No, I'm with you, but a lot of people are doing films these days. But I mean, you have to admit, going from going behind the scenes to literally behind the scenes and funding these things, I imagine, sir, it must have been an education for you. You just didn't. Most of us probably think we grab our cameras, we go out and shoot, we get in the iMovie, and we throw it up on Amazon. I'm sure it's a much more complicated process than that. Figuring out what people would want to watch, getting the crews, the funding, producing. Was it an education for you?
Yeah, I wish you had told me it was complicated 2 years ago. I might have done it differently. No, it was an education and an expensive one at that. So it was a self-funded film. So we're happy to be available to download on iTunes and Amazon now. And but yeah, no, it's a really complicated process, as you said. And just when you think the editing is done, then you move into post-production and distribution, and it just seems to go on and on. But it's been a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
So this is available on Amazon right now, Mosel?
Yeah, it's on iTunes. You can watch it on iTunes or Amazon. You can also buy it on DVD or Blu-ray at Amazon or Walmart. So it's pretty much available everywhere online.
Dan, by the way, you're listening to Dan Gabriel, Kevin Miller in the Morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Catch his film Mosel, his documentary, as he said, available on iTunes. You can buy it distribution-wise. You can go to Amazon Prime. A lot of distribution forces here. We should just have you on talking about how you figured that out. But what don't we know about what's really happening, at least during the time you were filming in Iraq, or even today in that region, sir?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of surprising things that even, were shocking to me. One of them I think that the viewers will take away from the film is that the impact and actually the influence of Iran in the liberation of Mosul. So the Iranian government actually funded quite a bit of these militias that you hear about, especially on the Shia side, in terms of equipment and training and personnel. You'll see the Hezbollah flag, the yellow of the Hezbollah flag on the battlefield. So this is really a story of a bunch of different groups coming together under the Iraqi flag in theory. So you've got Sunni and Shia, Kurd, Yazidi, Christian. They're all coming together to defeat ISIS. But the role of Iran in it is definitely not to be missed, especially as things are heating up now between the U.S. and Iran. Got to keep that in mind.
Dan Gabriel joining us here. You go back to Iran. I'm sure you game planned for that during your time at the CIA. We can go back further, 1979, them funding, as you've said, Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, and yet strangely they're against ISIS. What's your take post-CIA on the Iranian vibe, the Iranian philosophy?
Yeah, so the takeaway on that, I guess, at least in this instance, is the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend, or vice versa. The film does show, though, that the seeds of the next conflict are right there in front of us. And when you see the interaction of the group and you listen to what they say, sometimes the subtext is a little bit deeper, and you can really see how we could end up in another conflict in 2 or 5 years, or even if it's not us, the characters in the film. These are groups that have been at each other for hundreds of years. So there's a cautionary tale to the film, like I said, to remain focused and keep our attention on those threats. But there's also an optimistic thread, because I think it does show these groups coming together for a bigger cause.
Which was the most difficult, actually going up the river and shooting without being shot at, or navigating post-production, distribution, the contracts with iTunes, Amazon, and getting it printed on DVD?
It sounds like you have been up the river of distribution before, because you're absolutely right. It was a year in the making, and that was by far the biggest bureaucratic jungle that we had to navigate through.
Dan, anything else you'd like to share with us, sir?
No, I hope your listeners are able to check it out. Again, they can watch it on iTunes or Amazon. I really appreciate the time, Kevin.
Well, thank you, sir. We'd love to have you back.
Much appreciated. I'd love that as well.
All right.
You have a great weekend.
You too, sir. There we go. Thank you.
Take care.
There we have it. Not only do we have a CIA officer telling us what it was like to be in the CIA, but figuring out this new modern means of distribution. And when we're talking about that, Amazon Prime, Netflix, here we have this. Isn't that amazing? Here, he self-funds it, which, again, hopefully it'll do well for him. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. When we're talking about the Iranian regime and everything else, overnight, again, KIDO Talk Radio is your home for Fox News on the radio. The president talking to our own Laura Ingraham. If you missed it last night, we're waking up to it this morning.
What people don't report is the letter he had to do to straighten out his testimony, because his testimony was wrong. But Nancy Pelosi, I call her Nervous Nancy, Nancy Pelosi doesn't talk about it. Nancy Pelosi's a disaster, okay? She's a disaster. And let her do what she wants. You know what? I think they're in big trouble.
The people go back and forth on the president. He shouldn't say this. He shouldn't say that. And I don't know how many times Patriot Ray, Tea Party Bob, and others Steve Ackerman, when he was here locally, now working for Congressman Fulcher, we would go back and forth on this. Why can't we have someone who fires back? Finally, President Trump is fighting back. Nancy Pelosi was quoted as saying she wants to put him in jail. That's not appropriate for the third person in line in our government, right? I mean, this is just disrespectful. It sends the wrong message.
They should be saying, we're with the president. We'll do whatever he wants to do. And Mexico would fold like an umbrella. Now I have these people. And I'm saying there's some Republicans, too. I think they should be ashamed of themselves. But we have Pelosi. We have crying Chuck Schumer, who's a disaster, by the way. He's a total political, jerk.
I look, now, many people in Idaho were very polite. I continue to work on my politeness. Not perfect there. Very tolerant here. People say, well, I don't really appreciate the president doing that. Okay. You don't believe that the president's right to do that, but you have to admit it is a guilty pleasure.
They should be saying, we're with the president. We'll do whatever he wants to do. And Mexico would fold like an umbrella. Now I have these people. And I'm saying there's some Republicans, too. I think they should be ashamed of themselves. But we have Pelosi. We have crying Chuck Schumer, who's a disaster, by the way. He's a total political, jerk.
Is he wrong? He's a total political jerk. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'll talk a little bit about that. And by the way, I think, if you're looking for something to do this weekend, you want to stay in, maybe you're tired of the wind, check out this movie Mosul from Dan Gabriel. Boy, I can't wait to check that out. I wrote that down, and we'll take a look at that, find out what really happened going up the river, the Tigris River, right? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Earlier in the week, we were discussing tolerance. By the way, time is 6:21. And coming up, we see the flags in the city of Boise. If you don't work in Boise, you don't see the rainbow-colored flags representing Pride Week in Boise. I think that's next week, but maybe it's the pre-Pride week. And, I've opined, well, everybody should have their time. Quite frankly, though, I don't see the American flags up as much as I see the gay flags up. And that's just kind of how it is. So at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I'd like to share with you a story about tolerance.
Festivals say the lights will go on next weekend, thanks to donations from the community, Hotbox Farms, and Albertsons. Pride Fest has reached their $7,500 fundraising goal. Organizers say they'll use the money to light the State House from across the street using high-intensity lights. A policy change with the State Department of Administration this year meant that no groups, including the Pride Festival, would be allowed to light the Capitol due to what they say was an overwhelming number of requests. Boise Pride Fest says the overwhelming support they've received will also help fund a fireworks show.
And you know where Hotbox Farms is located? Huntington, Oregon. Now, look, in Oregon, pot is legal. You can do what you want at Hotbox Farms. It's nice that Channel 7 mentioned Hotbox Farms as a sponsor of this. So essentially the big story was that unfortunately, look, the state of Idaho, it's like Boise State. They can do what they want with the blue field, right? If they don't want Garth Brooks and Blake Shelton on the blue field, it's not going to be Garth Brooks and Blake Shelton on the blue field. But they want them there. Okay? They want to sell the blue turf. Great. And by the way, to my boy, Alvis, who said he listens to this program every day, one of the Alvises, he hasn't reached out to me. Alvis, we need to talk. We need to get you guys in here because you said, hey, we want to come into the program. The guys that dress up at the Boise State game. So hopefully my man is listening because he says he listens every day. Sorry, I digress. So here we have people saying, look, it's important that the rainbow is up there. We have a major media outlet mentioning the sponsor, which actually sells, I believe, in Huntington, Oregon. That's where they sell the weed, right? Hotbox Farms. Nothing against them, but why are we mentioning them? It's a great promotion for them. If you're looking to go somewhere, go to Hotbox Farms, right? Which in the state of Idaho is illegal. We've discussed this. By the way, a great story about the CBD oil Trojan horse right now on KIDOTalkRadio.com. That having been said, we move on. We're talking about tolerance because we're going to hear about tolerance Because people like Kevin Miller and traditional family value Americans, we're labeled intolerant. Let's go to the state of Washington, shall we? Well, maybe we won't. Well, unfortunately, I guess I'll just have to do this. Florist in the same-sex wedding case had been elevated to the Supreme Court. The Washington Supreme Court ruled, unfortunately, that the florist was in trouble. The florist made a bad move. The florist did not want to, again, bake a cake. We've seen this again and again and again, right? Again and again and again, we've seen this, where we've had people, like the guy in Colorado and other places, that have said, look, this is against our religion. We don't want this going on. We're not going to do it. We'll recommend you to some other person, a photographer, what have you. Well, that wasn't good enough for these folks. So what happened next is they took this 70-year-old florist to court. Now, again, the key word is tolerance, right? So whether you agree or disagree with what's going on here in the Treasure Valley, whether you agree or disagree that the State House is going to be lit up in the rainbow, it's about tolerance. Well, what about people that don't agree with the gay lifestyle? Is there room in America for them? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Your reaction next. But first, KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
Of the Supreme Court here, a flurry of activity. So this case, you're right, involves a florist out of Washington State. This, a very similar case to the Masterpiece Bake Shop decision that we got just a few weeks ago. In this case, a florist out of Washington State has refused to make a floral arrangement for a same-sex couple's wedding. Of course, that very similar to what we saw in Colorado, where the baker there refused to make a cake for a same-sex couple. So what's happened here is the Supreme Court has said, we will not take up this case out of Washington State. Instead, we're going to vacate the lower court ruling that ruled against the florist, and we're going to send it back down to the lower court so they can revisit this issue in light of what we decided in the Masterpiece Cake Shop ruling. It's quite an interesting decision here, Poppy, because the Supreme Court really has avoided the constitutional question as to whether or not retailers, business owners can refuse service on the basis of their religious beliefs when it comes to same-sex couples, same-sex weddings. And they're once again really sidestepping deciding this issue here. They did not decide the constitutional question in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, and they also are not deciding the issue here. Instead, sending it back down to the lower courts to have them deal with it in light of the Masterpiece Cake Shop decision. And
there we have it. Tolerance. Is it tolerance or intolerance? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to David in Nampa with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Yeah. Can I ask a question? Do you know why the father gives the bride away? There's a very specific reason. The first father, God, gave the first bride, Eve, to Adam. It's what's called imitatio Dei, to use a couple of big words. You are not asking somebody, this isn't 1960 where they had the lunch counter sit-ins. Okay, this isn't serving a gay person a cup of coffee or, you know, a bowl of ice cream or a slice of pie. This is asking someone to participate in a religious ceremony. And I wish, the First Amendment, the only protection that has a double protector, and it's first, is religion. Everything else has one, but the left hates the First Amendment. I mean, they hate the first, they hate the second. I don't know what they feel about the third. They hate the fourth. They hate the fifth, especially the takings clause. I could go other amendments they hate. They hate the Constitution. But seriously, you are asking someone, and how many times has it happened, like the florist out of Colorado? I think it was Colorado, or is it Oregon, now that I think about it? No, the bake shop was in Oregon. There was and then there was a couple who had rented a house, an upstate New York farmhouse. It was a big farmhouse. They'd rented out for parties and weddings and whatever. And they had let it out to this gay couple for an event. But then when they wanted to have a wedding, they said, we can't do that. And they got sued. I wish I could remember who said this, but let's just say it wasn't me. A totalitarian and authoritarian governments are not nice places, and they're both pretty much against the same things. But a totalitarian government doesn't stop at the front door. An authoritarian government pretty much will. So who's a totalitarian? They want you to have a private religious service in your own home, and if you say you won't, you get prosecuted. I don't know what the Supreme Court was smoking, but
let's go back to this idea of tolerance, though, because you have people with the flags and stuff, and now we've got the State House lit up, and we've got the farm out of Huntington, Oregon, where they sell the weed, funding this. We have to mention them. What about tolerance if you're not down with the whole thing? What does that say? I mean, shouldn't they be tolerant of the florist?
Well, no. I mean, just this week we've had them crush Steven Crowder on social media. They told Lila Rose, speaking of First Amendment, she can't post anything about abortion procedures. She can't put ultrasounds on her website. I told you, they really do hate all aspects of the First Amendment for other people. They want tolerance for them. It's like forgiveness. That's only for those who deserve it. It's like why bin Laden, I think it's a touch point the left have with the worst parts of things. Do you know why bin Laden did the East Africa bombings on Friday morning?
No.
He said all the good Muslims will be in prayer and everybody else nuts to them. That's what the left are like, too. Our gang, Uber Alles. Hey, that's a great name for a song. The Uber Alles.
David, thank you for the call. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be with you. Don't forget, right after Dave Ramsey is Sean Hannity. Joining us now from Capitol Hill on Fox News Radio, exclusively on KIDO Talk Radio, is our own Rachel Sutherland. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And it looks like the president might have another victory when it comes to Mexico.
Well, they've been at the negotiating table pretty much all week, a Mexican delegation meeting with high-level White House officials as they try to stop these 5% tariffs that are set to kick in on Monday. The president telling Fox's Laura Ingraham that tariffs are a beautiful thing, so he's not concerned about criticism from within his own party. There are some Democrats and Republicans on the Hill that are considering taking action to block these tariffs. But apparently some progress has been made. The Washington Post is reporting that they're looking at a plan to overhaul the asylum policies across the whole region. Now, this is kind of complicated because it would deal with El Salvador, Guatemala, and dealing with Central American nations saying, okay, say if you're leaving El Salvador, you need to stop in the next safe country. That would be Guatemala, and then Guatemalans, the next safe country would be Mexico. So you would be dealing with Honduras, you'd be doing Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, and the United States. So that's 5 countries that would have to come up with some kind of an agreement by the close of business today. So I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, if anybody can do it.
I guess so. This has been a long-standing problem. We know that, and the president has been growing increasingly frustrated, hence the tariff threat. Now, there's always a chance that the president could extend the deadline. I mean, he's done that with China before, so it could be a possibility he'd do it with Mexico. Now, Customs and Border Protection has reported a surge in May, the highest number of migrants coming across the southern border in a decade. So there definitely is a problem there. There's a lot of people fleeing Central America and making that arduous journey. As far as the tariffs are concerned, they would hit Monday and then escalate from there. They could hit 25% by October. And it's got people nervous, Kevin. I mean, even the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has been thinking about taking legal action on this one.
Well, they do disagree with the president when it comes to the whole immigration debate, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. But the president making a lot of news last night with this interview with Laura Ingraham. I'm sure you see her around the Bureau all the time. Laura Ingraham, ubiquitous in Washington for probably the last at least 20 years, maybe 30 years. hard to believe she's been around that long, but getting the president to say, some fascinating things. Not that he doesn't say that all the time.
That's right. I mean, he definitely, during the interview, was saying that he believes that tariffs are a beautiful thing, that it's a good word, tariffs, and that if they're used correctly.
Right.
He's certainly the first president in recent modern history to be using tariffs. But again, very controversial. There is concern about the economic impact on both nations. I mean, car parts come from Mexico. A lot of stuff comes from Mexico. They don't think about, beyond your tequila and that kind of thing. So I think the markets have been a little unsettled. Having tariffs on two fronts, on China and Mexico, makes things a little, again, unstable, and investors like stability.
And we like you, Rachel Sutherland. Always appreciate your insight.
Back at you.
Take care. There we have it. Rachel Sutherland joining us. Coming up next, a move in Colorado to rename Columbine High School. We'll tell you about that. Taking your phone calls about tolerance. It is soon to be the Pride Week. So what happens if you disagree with people dressing up, men dressing up as women, the drag queens? Does that make you a bad person? That if you believe the state government of Idaho says no more anyone lighting up the state house, and you have the Priders, the Pride people saying, you're not the boss of us, state of Idaho. We're going to go get outside money, and we're going to light up the rainbow because the rainbow is more important than perhaps giving that money to a charity, giving that money to a legal defense fund. And then you have the purveyors of recreational marijuana out of Huntington, Oregon, Hot Box Farms, funding the thing, according to a report on Channel 7. The marijuana wars continue to emanate closer and closer to our beloved Idaho. Hillbilly CJ joins us now with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hillbilly CJ.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How you doing today?
Thankfully, still employed at least as of right now.
Well, likewise. So I've got an idea. So with them lighting up the state building, maybe you've heard of stream lights or those high-pressure LED lights.
Yeah.
Maybe in protest, maybe the straight crowd would like to come out and walk the sidewalk with their high-pressure flashlights and block them from lighting up the State House to show our unification of being straight and heterosexual.
Well, in Boston, they're doing a straight Pride Week.
Well, that's what I think we need to combat it with is, I guess maybe because the rest of us working stiffs go to work, protest is not really in our bloods because we're busy with family and other life. And I think when you're smoking marijuana and your hopes aren't very high, you have a lot of extra free time on your hands to do idle things.
Well, what do you make of, seriously, Hillbilly CJ, what do you make of lighting up the State House in the rainbow and getting the folks in Huntington to pay for it?
I don't feel it's right. I kind of feel a state building should be reserved for state officials. If they want to light it up with the American flag, I think that'd be wonderful. I guess I don't see it's just like anybody else's cause. I don't want people lighting it up with pictures of the Koran on there either, So that's about all I got other than the marijuana thing. Unfortunately, the only thing marijuana doesn't cure is smoking more marijuana.
Or stupidity.
Correct. So.
Well, hey, we appreciate you making the time to call in on your way to work, and I hope those 8 hours go quickly.
It's only half days for me, Bubba.
Oh.
Just 12 hours a day.
God bless, brother.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hillbilly CJ. Let's go to Liberal Steve, who joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Speaking of the Treasure Valley's voice of tolerance.
Love will win, Idaho. Love will always win. In Hillbilly, you were just nasty. I could see why they could have a hillbilly parade. That would make sense. But why would straight men want to have a parade? I mean, 90% of men all worldwide are straight. Maybe 10% are bisexual or homosexual or lesbian or.
Is that based on your firsthand knowledge?
No, that's based on years of reading and science, and I don't know how many straight guys were like in Wyoming were beaten and first tied to a fence and then beaten to death. I don't know how many were dragged behind cars. I know there was a lot of black people hung in the South, the slaves and stuff for no reason or for spitting on the sidewalk. I know a lot of that stuff, and now that love is winning, which a rainbow is a promise of renewed, and these people are able to not have to hide in the corner. They can be open about their love for each other. I have no problem with it, and I find, what I found now, I'm 67 years old, Miller. I found in my lifetime that most men that have to call men names for their sexuality, if it's different than their own, are usually in the closet themselves or bisexuals.
Now, thank you for giving us your diatribe here on KIDO Talk. We love tolerance in the First Amendment. However, first of all, you insulting other people, shame, know your name. Number two, you didn't answer my question. What happens if you're not down with the rainbow? And then you got the Huntington people funding this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, man, dude, that's not cool. And if you're going to raise 10 grand, why not give it to a league? We could raise money tomorrow to put the State House in red, white, and blue. We could raise money tomorrow to bathe the State House in red for all the people that have died defending America, or for all the unborn children that have been lost. Or you could spend that money for a good cause. Is the rainbow that profound, that important that you need to raise, what is it, $7,500, $2,500 to make sure that that message is there? You've got the flags all over Boise now. Where's the tolerance for people that in America, at least up until today, were allowed to disagree?
Well, they can disagree, but the hillbilly, he was running them down. He was slamming them. I mean, come on. Why would you slam someone because of their sexuality?
Why would you paint the State House when you can just leave it there and raise the money for a good cause?
And there's a lot of countries that call themselves religious and practice doctrines that stone gays to death or hang gays in the street. And Russia is now becoming one of the more tolerant countries towards gays.
I don't think Russia is becoming tolerant of gays, ask Mr. Putin. The point being, as we said last week, where's the message for people that aren't in the club? And you have a major city, the biggest, the capital city, saying that we're all about this group one week. What about the other groups that disagree?
Well, they can disagree.
And what about the people that say, I'm not down with that? Well, does that make them bad people? Does that make them bigoted, intolerant, and not what other words you people use against good people?
I think it does make them bad people. I think it makes them very bad people, and they are just nasty.
Liberal Steve, we appreciate your phone call. Coming up next, Brian in Nampa, Hank in Boise, and you at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I mean, what's the... Look, is this really a major news story that we have people saying, well, the Capitol is going to be painted with the rainbow? Okay, great. How much money was raised to make that happen? And could that money have really gone to a better cause? What would be a better cause? Well, maybe helping people deal with hate crimes that we hear so much about that I haven't seen in the city, I haven't seen in the state. Maybe it's about raising awareness. Let's talk about it next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller, in the morning. Let's get to more of your phone calls. Brian in Nampa, Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Brian, good morning.
Hey, Kevin. Full disclosure, the left would call me homophobic, but I'm not. I'm a libertarian. And you know the nice thing about being a libertarian is freedom of speech. I don't care if the Nazis get out there and go and say what they want to say. I can think they're crazy. I can disagree with them, but I think they have the right to say it. And you're right. What happened to tolerance? I know as I've gotten older, I've probably become a little less tolerant, according to the left. But I'm wondering what deadly sin is next out of the 7 deadly sin. We got the Pride Week. Which one's next? You know, do we need to go get all the mass murderers and march them down the city and say, hey, we need to be more tolerant of them? He said love. When I went to school and church, at least when I went to church, they taught me that God loves me so much, he'll chastise me and help me fix what I need to fix in my life so I can return home to him. So, you know, I just don't, they've totally turned things. The rainbow. I was taught that the rainbow was God's promise to the earth that he would never destroy us again with a flood. So they and change them to fit what they mean. I don't get it. What's next?
Well, that's why we tune in each and every morning to find out what's next, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care what people do in the privacy of their own home, but I don't want to hear it. If you're straight, I don't care if you're gay. You know, I've worked at Polo Ralph Lauren, HP, and a gay guy sat there and started talking about what he did the last night. And I started quoting Romans to him, and he got mad at me. And I said, dude, I don't want to hear that any more than you want to hear what I just said to you. Now, if you want me to be tolerant of you, fine. Be tolerant of me. Respect my beliefs and my feelings on the subject. And we got along fine from there on out. He later asked me, do you hate gay people, Chet? And I'm like, no, I don't hate myself because I swear. And swearing's a sin. I know there's probably going to be somebody call in and like they did before and say, you know, smoking dope isn't a sin. Well, according to Chet, it is. So it's okay if you don't believe it is. Go ahead, go smoke the dope. But I'm not going to. And that, you're right. You want me to respect your beliefs, but you don't want to respect mine.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way.
Exactly, Brian. Thank you for the call. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. Back to your phone calls. We go to Hank in Boise. Hank, good morning.
Good morning. I'm afraid if we're going to go to the other extreme, even though it happened over 60 years ago, the 1955 incident, which led to mass arrests of gays in Boise, started when there was oral sex taking place at Julia Davis Park. Now, the question I'd raise on this is that the people who are advocating tolerance to such an extent, are we going to be pushed to the point where we're going to have to be tolerant of open sexuality in public? I mean, I don't think it was right necessarily to go into a mass arrest of what happened in 1955, but on the other hand, we can swing the other extreme in this. Why can't sexuality be behind closed doors? Why do we have to parade or display sexuality? That's what's or in your face. That's the problem I have with this liberation movement. I don't care or give a rat's ass what people do behind closed doors, but I don't want it shoved in my face. And the point of all this is that there's a lot of lessons to be learned in the 1955 incident where you get one extreme or the other extreme in this, and I'm afraid we're flipping to the other extreme in this.
When do we flip back?
Well, that's what I'm worrying about. You know, it seems like that we give ground, but somehow we never push back, or we never take back ground. That's the point. Your question is well taken. I'm not sure, but I don't think that the state house should be used for promotion of homosexuality of any sort. I'll use the politically correct word, the homosexuality.